10 Evil Pastors Who Killed Their Family. Welcome back to Creepshow, where we explore the darkest corners of humanity and unveil chilling tales that shock and disturb. In today's episode, we're diving into the unsettling stories of 10 pastors who betrayed the ultimate trust by committing unspeakable acts against their own families. These individuals were leaders in their communities, guiding their congregations with supposed wisdom and faith. Yet behind closed doors, they harbored horrific secrets. Prepare yourself as we reveal how these pastors fell from grace and crossed over to the darkest side. If you're ready to dive in, hit that like button and let's get started. Number 10. Matt Baker. In 2006, Matt Baker made a frantic call to the authorities, reporting that his wife, Carrie Baker, had taken her own life. He claimed he'd been out at a video store around 11:15 p.m. and returned home at midnight, only to find Carrie lying motionless on their bed. Her body was later discovered on the floor, near a bottle of wine coolers, some sleeping pills, and a suicide note. Matt said he'd moved her body after trying to revive her. As a respected pastor at Crossroads Baptist Church, located just outside of Waco, Texas, the news of Carrie's alleged suicide came as a shock to the small-town community. Initially, her death was ruled a suicide, but Carrie's parents were suspicious of Matt's strange behavior. An investigation into Matt's second job uncovered his work computer, where authorities found pornography and disturbing searches related to overdosing on sleeping pills. Then came a twist. Investigators discovered he'd been having an affair with the daughter of the church's music minister. In court, she became a key witness, testifying that she had tried to end the affair, only for Matt to respond, "I killed my wife for you." It took the jury less than 8 hours to deliberate and ultimately find Matt guilty. The story of Matt Baker is just one example of a trusted pastor whose life took a dark and horrifying turn. Stick around as we delve into the chilling tales of more pastors who committed heinous acts against their own families. If you're as captivated as we are, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned for the next spine-chilling entry on Creepshow. Number 9. Arthur B. Schirmer. While Arthur Schirmer was serving as the pastor of Bethany United Methodist Church, tragedy struck his home. His first wife was found at the foot of their basement stairs with an extension cord tangled around her leg. She was rushed to the hospital where she passed away the next day from multiple skull fractures. Initially, it was believed that she had suffered a massive heart attack that led to the fall. But when investigators reopened the case, they discovered something chilling. The damage to her heart wasn't consistent with a heart attack caused by a fall. Instead, it was linked to severe head trauma. Following this revelation, Arthur was charged with her murder, and after a lengthy trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. Arthur's story is a haunting reminder that sometimes even those we trust most are capable of hiding dark secrets. Stay tuned as we continue to explore these shocking stories of pastors who betrayed their families and their faith. If you're finding this journey as unsettling as we are, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling content on Creepshow. Number 8. Nick Hacheney. Nick Hacheney was seen as a devout man of God, serving as a youth pastor on Bainbridge Island, Washington. But on the day after Christmas in 1997, tragedy struck. His wife, Dawn, perished in a house fire. While Nick continued his pastoral duties, his congregation believed the fire was a tragic accident, rallying around him during his time of grief. However, it was his unorthodox behavior in counseling sessions that eventually led to his arrest for her murder. Initially, Hacheney conducted marriage counseling sessions with couples. But as these sessions progressed, he began meeting privately with the wives. One woman, Annette Anderson, recalled how Nick claimed that God wanted them to engage in sexual activities as part of her therapy. They regularly met in a hotel room, and his affairs soon expanded to include other women within the church, even Dawn's own mother, who believed she was helping him grieve. In time, Annette confided in her husband, who alerted church officials. This revelation led to a deeper investigation, uncovering evidence of Nick's guilt. In 2002, he was convicted of murder after admitting to another woman that he had killed his wife to be with her. Her testimony was critical in bringing him to justice. Number 7. Eugene Keahey. Eugene Keahey, pastor of Mount Zion Church in Sand Branch, committed a horrifying act of violence that claimed the lives of his family members. In a shocking murder-suicide, Eugene set his house on fire before fatally shooting his wife and 2 daughters. The fire killed his wife and 1 daughter instantly, while his second daughter succumbed to her injuries the next day. Authorities found evidence inside the charred remains of the house that raised immediate suspicions. Neighbors reported hearing gunshots as the fire raged, which investigators later confirmed. Eventually, it became clear that Eugene had taken his own life with a gun after murdering his family. It is believed that financial stress and personal turmoil drove him to commit this tragic act. Number 6. Anthony Hopkins. As the pastor of Inspirational Tabernacle Church in Jackson, Alabama, Anthony Hopkins appeared to lead a life of service, preaching at revivals and guiding his congregation. Yet behind closed doors, he was a man driven by sinister impulses. In 2004, after his wife discovered he had been sexually abusing his stepdaughter, Hopkins murdered her and hid her body in a freezer. Her tragic fate remained unknown for 4 years, until Hopkins' eldest stepdaughter came forward and reported it to authorities. According to the children's testimonies, on the night of her death, their mother had confronted Hopkins, forcing him out of the house. He returned later, wielding a hammer, and broke back into the home. In court, the eldest stepdaughter testified that Hopkins had enlisted her help in hiding the body in the freezer. Hopkins claimed he hadn't killed her, stating that he found her lifeless and, in his words, had placed her in the freezer only to prevent her body from decomposing. The authorities ruled her death a homicide, although they couldn't determine the exact cause. Hopkins was ultimately found guilty of murder, along with charges of second-degree rape, second-degree sexual abuse, second-degree sodomy, and incest. Number 5. Edmund Lopes. Edmund Lopes stood before his small Washington church congregation with a shocking confession. He claimed to have once been a hired killer, responsible for more than 28 deaths, but insisted that he had left that past behind. While the congregation was willing to forgive, it was only a matter of time before the real truth emerged. Lopes was a parole violator from Illinois, and authorities were actively seeking his return to prison. He was arrested under a warrant, yet managed to post bail, spending only 1 night behind bars. Returning to the pulpit, Lopes attempted to clarify the lies he had told. He confessed he hadn't been a mafia hitman, nor had he been mentored by a former Nixon official. Contrary to his story of finding God on death row, he admitted that he'd found faith through reading the Bible. The truth behind Lopes's past was chilling. He had murdered his second wife by strangling her, and later he brutally attacked a companion, stabbing and choking her before leaving her for dead. In 1972, Lopes was convicted of murder and attempted murder, yet he was paroled in 1983 under the condition that he remain within state lines. He violated that parole and spent some time in jail, but was arrested again in 1997 on charges of bigamy. Lopes ultimately died behind bars at the age of 77 in Illinois, having taken many of his secrets with him. Number 4. Earnie Stokes. In 2005, Earnie Stokes called the authorities, claiming he'd been the victim of a brutal home invasion. He alleged that the intruders had beaten him with a brick and doused him in gasoline. But in the midst of this chaos, his wife, Sybil, was found dead on their bed, shot in the head. The couple had been married for 35 years, but investigators quickly sensed something off about Ernie's story. Earnie, a former preacher, had been living in Centerville, Alabama, where it became clear to authorities that he hadn't been faithful to his wife. He'd been carrying on an affair with a member of his church congregation, and he confided in a friend that he and Sybil hadn't been intimate for years. Then came a key piece of evidence. Earnie had purchased ammunition from a local store on the same day his wife was killed. This detail, along with other inconsistencies in his account, led authorities to conclude that Earnie himself was responsible for Sybil's death. 2 years later, he was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison, a tragic ending for a marriage that had spawned decades. Ernie's story is a chilling example of betrayal that cuts to the core of trust. If these tales of twisted faith have you hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe for more dark stories on Creepshow. Stay tuned as we continue to unveil more shocking tales. Number 3. Terry Greer. In 2013, 18-year-old Susanna Greer found herself hiding in a closet, terrified, as her father, Terry Greer, was on a violent rampage. Moments earlier, he had shot her mother, and when he found Susanna, he fired at her, wounding her in the chest and arm. Miraculously, she managed to wrestle the gun away, fleeing to a neighbor's house for help. When police arrived, they discovered her mother's lifeless body, with gunshot wounds to the head, neck, and hand. Terry had also attempted to take his own life, stabbing himself 8 times with a large knife, but his suicide attempt failed. In court, Terry claimed he couldn't recall the events of that day. He attributed this to a combination of factors. He was taking medication for cardiovascular dementia, had suffered a brain injury the year before, and was battling depression. Charged with the murder of his wife and the attempted murder of his daughter, Terry's case took a twist in 2014 when a judge found him not guilty by reason of mental illness or defect. Initially committed to a state institution, he was later released to a group home under strict conditions, including a no-contact rule with his daughter unless she initiated it. Number 2. Fred Neulander. Fred Neulander, the founding rabbi of Congregation Makor Shalom Reform Temple in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, seemed to be a pillar of his community. But in a shocking turn of events, his wife, Carol Neulander, was brutally attacked and killed nearly 20 years after the temple first opened its doors. With the investigation quickly turning into a media circus, Fred stepped down from his role as rabbi a year after her murder. In 2002, the truth surfaced. Fred had hired 2 men to carry out his wife's murder, paying them around $30,000 for the job. As details of his private life emerged, it became known that he had been involved in an affair with a radio personality at the time of Carol's death. His initial trial ended in a hung jury, and due to the extensive media coverage, his retrial was moved to a different county. This time, the jury found him guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Fred Neulander's life ended behind bars. He passed away at the age of 82 on April 17, 2024, in a New Jersey correctional facility. Neulander's story serves as a reminder that sometimes the most trusted figures can harbor the darkest secrets. Join us next as we reveal our final story, and don't forget to subscribe and like for more unsettling tales on Creepshow. Number 1. Michael Tabb. Michael Tabb was serving as a pastor in Troop, Texas, when he committed a brutal act that shook his community. His wife, Marla Tabb, was found in their parsonage bedroom lying in a pool of blood. She had sustained severe blunt force injuries to her head and a broken jaw. The murder weapon was never found, but the violent nature of the attack was clear. Marla had given birth to their second son just 6 weeks before her death. Despite his claims of innocence, authorities uncovered damning evidence: blood on Tabb's shoes and in the bed of his vehicle. Faced with this, he ultimately accepted a plea deal, stating he didn't want to put his family through the trauma of a trial. This deal led to a 50-year prison sentence. However, on the day he was set to plead guilty, Tabb attempted to take his own life. In response, prosecutors increased the sentence he would serve. Thanks for tuning in to Creepshow. If you found today's video chilling, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let us know in the comments which story shocked you the most, and if you'd like to hear more about disturbing true crime cases or dark historical mysteries. Remember, the world is full of secrets hiding in plain sight, so keep your eyes open and stay curious. Until next time, stay safe, or try to, at least.